The prefix para means to the side. So these purple bumps or brown bumps or zits that you see on the thyroid here, those are the parathyroid organs. And they're also located on the posterior aspect of the thyroid. So we're looking at the back of the neck. There are four parathyroid organs that you have. In the lab, when we view slides of the parathyroid glands, you'll see the characteristic tissues of the thyroid gland itself, those, big colloid follicles, and you'll see these really darkly stained purple blotches. And it's those very, very purple blotches that are the parathyroid glands. So there are two cell types in the parathyroid, and it depends on who you ask what their names are, but there are principal cells, formerly called chief cells and sometimes called parathyroid cells, right? Just give me a consensus, right? And there are also oxyphil cells. So the chief parathyroid principal cells. Oh, I'm sorry, it's been a long day. Those cells that make parathyroid hormone, they stain a really dark purple in the nucleus and a slightly lighter purple in their cytoplasm. And the oxyphil cells, they just stain a pretty pink color. Principal cells, they make the parathyroid hormone, and they do that in response to high calcium levels in the blood. So the parathyroid gland is both sensor and control center in its own feedback loop. And because parathyroid hormone is released in response to a blood level, this is what is called a humoral trigger. Recall from another mini lecture, or stop this and go and watch the other mini lecture, that the thyroid consists of all of these big follicles that you see in this picture on the left, right? And a follicle is those big open pink areas called colloid, and they're all surrounded by cuboidal follicular cells that all touch the colloid. Between the follicles, not touching the colloid, are the appropriately named C cells. C cells in the thyroid gland produce calcitonin. It's a hormone that lowers blood calcium levels and has nothing to do with your thyroid other than the fact that the cells happen to be in that organ. Both PTH and calcitonin are released in response to blood calcium levels, right? And so this means they both have humoral triggers. Both hormones affect the same three organs: kidneys, small intestine, and bone. However, they have opposite effects. Right? PTH's purpose is to raise your blood calcium. And so it affects the entryway for your calcium, the small intestine. And it says, please, please take more calcium in from the food in a process called absorption. And then PTH affects your kidney, which is the exit for your calcium. And PTH says, please, please retain more calcium in a process called reabsorption. So basically, it's like absorb, reabsorb, keep, keep, keep. PTH also affects bone, but we know that there are a bunch of different cells in bone. And PTH specifically affects osteoclasts to increase bone breakdown or osteolysis. By breaking down bone, these osteoclasts will be releasing calcium, and this is going to raise levels in the blood. Calcitonin does the opposite for the small intestine and kidney by decreasing absorption in the small intestine, decreasing reabsorption in the kidney, and instead of affecting osteoclasts, calcitonin affects osteoblasts to take calcium up from the blood and preserve it in the calcium matrix of bone. Antagonistic hormones like calcitonin and PTH, they work in opposition of each other. Insulin and glucagon from the pancreas, they do the same thing for blood glucose. Insulin lowers it, glucagon increases it. So antagonistic hormones, they work against each other. And you can see that in the oscillation of the blue and red lines in the graph down below. But what about when hormones work with each other? This would be called permissiveness, and it's seen in the thyroid gland. Briefly, when the thyroid hormone is really high, it inserts epinephrine receptors into cardiac muscle fibers or cardiomyocytes. And so you get a double dose of heart rate increase from thyroid hormone and epinephrine.